we're going to have a recap on everything that we have learned this year and the previous year. Okay, so we're going to look at the two components that you will be sitting for your IGCSE. So let's have a look at paper 1 first. Paper 1, writing. It's going to be for 1 hour, 30 minutes. Okay, so candidates will be answering 2 questions. All right. So, like I said, you will be answering 2 questions. One is compulsory question in section 1 and one more question from section 2. Okay, so section 1, it's going to be directed writing. It'll contribute 30 marks for the overall paper. So in section 1, you are presented with 1 compulsory writing task. So you will write a response of 200 to 300 words. And the second section will be a composition task. It will also be for 30 marks. So you will complete 1 writing task from a choice of 5 questions, which is descriptive, argumentative, and narrative essay titles. And you will be asked to write a response of 350 to 500 words. Okay, so both these components are externally assessed, which means it will be marked by Cambridge examiners. Okay, so the overall marks for this paper is 60. All right, moving on to the second paper, which is paper 2, reading. This will be for 1 hour, 45 minutes, and you have to answer all the questions in both sections. Okay, so section 1, reading for ideas, 25 marks. So you will have to scan a factual text and identify the key points. And then using the key points, you will produce a written summary of 150 to 180 words. So there's word limit given and you are strictly required to follow it. Okay, and then you have to answer questions to identify examples of function in the text. For example, opinions, advice, criticism, or warnings. So that's for section 1. For section 2, reading for meaning, it's also for 25 marks. So you will respond to questions about 1 narrative passage. So both the passages are given in paper 2 and it will be approximately 700 words each. And this component is also externally assessed and the overall marks for this paper is 50. So paper 1 is 60, paper 2 is 50. All right. So now we're going to go in very detail about paper 1. Okay. So let's have a look at section 1, directed writing first. Okay. So for directed writing, you have to write, it could be either a letter, it could be formal letter, or it could be informal letter, or they might ask you to write a speech or report or article which fit for purpose and relevant to the world of study, work, or community. Okay, so they'll give you either one out of these 4 texts that you have learned. Okay, and you have to write 200 to 300 words to inform or persuade a particular audience. And a total of 15 marks is allocated for task fulfillment, which is whether you have fulfilled the format they have required you to do. And another 15 for language. So your spelling, your punctuation, everything comes under language. Okay, so the overall marks will be 30. Now, let's have a look at the formats of all of the directed writing that we have learned, which is letter, speech, report, and article. So here is the sample questions. This is how your question will look like in your IGCSE directed writing. Okay, they'll give you a question. Are you able to? Is it working? Okay. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm sorry. All right. Okay, continuing. So the sample question, this is how the question will look like. Okay. You have to read the whole question. Every detail in the question is very important. Do not miss out reading anything till the end. Okay. So they'll give you 3 bullet points. You must use the 3 bullet points to answer your essay. Okay, including the last few lines, all right? For example, cover all 3 points in detail. Make sure your letter is informative and helpful for the police. Start your letter with "Dear Sir." So you see, they have asked you to specifically start the letter with "Dear Sir." So you have to follow exactly. Okay, same goes to if it is a report writing. Okay, they say start your report to the principal. That means you have to start your report writing to the principal. So do not miss out any important information in the question. Okay, make sure you double check and you read it twice before you start writing your essay. All right, so let's start with writing a letter. How do you write a letter and what is the reason you're writing this letter? Okay, so first of all, it's very important for you to understand why are you writing this particular letter and what is the purpose of this letter. So most often you are writing this letter to either to inform or communicate an experience or point of view to the reader. Okay, so basically all this letter, the letter, it could be either informal or formal. You are giving the readers information about a certain topic. Okay, and it also can be used to persuade the reader. For example, to ask for the writer's opinion to be considered. So you're writing this so that you are trying to express your opinion about a topic. Okay, so letters can be formal, for example, if the letter is being used to apply for a job. So formal letter, for example, application for a job. It means you're writing a very formal letter to a particular organization. Okay, letters can also be informal. For example, if the letter is written to someone you know very well, to tell them about your holiday and persuade them to try visiting the same place. So when it comes to informal, it means you're writing to someone that you're very close to or someone that you know very well. So you can give this person a name. Okay, it could be your cousin, it could be relative, your uncle, your aunt. Okay, and the ways you use language and vocabulary when writing a letter will depend on the audience and purpose that you are writing for. So please remember, you need to know who you are writing it for and why are you writing it for. Okay, so tips for writing a letter. Okay, when it comes to language, like I said, first thing, you need to know who are the audience for your letter. Okay, so usually the letters are written to only one person. Okay, although for more formal letters, you will not always know the person's name because formal, it could be for company or any organization. So you do not know the person's name. Okay, so you can just greet that, provide the salutation by dear sir or dear madam. Okay, but on the other hand, if it's an informal letter, you can provide the name because it could be your relative or your cousin. Okay, and when it comes to formal letter, you need to end your letter with yours faithfully. Okay, on the other hand, when it comes to informal letter, you can just end it with regards. Okay, or with love or your friend or your cousin. Okay, you must have an opening and closing line for your letters. Okay, and also how you expect or want and your audience, how do you want them to react? So for example, if you're trying to persuade your reader to agree with a particular idea or project, your language might be positive and in a cheerful tone because you're trying to persuade your readers. Okay, you have to maintain the tone in a very positive and cheerful tone. Okay, but the purpose of the letter. So for example, if you're writing to complain, then you're likely to be more formal and may use emotive words to describe aspects of poor service or bad experience. Okay, and the last one, how to influence your reader to take your point of view or suggestions seriously. So you have to remain calm and polite because you're trying to make a request here for them to take your suggestions into consideration. Okay, so when you are trying to give them a suggestion, you have to avoid writing very simple sentences with the same grammatical structure or simple repetitive vocab. Okay, you have to convince them why they should take your suggestion or recommendation into consideration. Okay, and organization, how do you organize your essay for letter? Okay, so plan a route through your letter before you actually start writing it. That means you have to know the structure of your letter. Okay, which is usually in 3 parts. You must have the opening paragraph, the middle part where you have 3 body paragraphs, and the last one is the ending, which is the closing paragraph. Okay, so in your opening paragraph, you must outline the overall aim and purpose of your letter and make it clear why you're writing this. Okay, in the middle part of the essay, you have to explain and develop the points. Remember the 3 bullet points that they have given you? You have to develop those points and make sure they are relevant to the purpose of the letter. All right, and conclusion, you have to draw your points together For example, summarize the main points you want your reader to remember or the action now required. Okay. And then you can also use conventional structure. For example, you can include the address of the writer at the top, a date, or an opening greeting such as dear, madam, or sir. Okay. And then you should end your letter with a standard phrase such as yours sincerely, yours faithfully. Okay, if you know the reader's name. Okay. And then you're also encouraged to use linking words and phrases which suit a more formal type of writing. So for example, you can use linking words such as furthermore, however, in conclusion, all right, and so on. And the last one is you can also provide time scales that involve clear to your reader. For example, I am currently, or previously, or prior to that. Okay, all these are just suggestions on how you can write your letter. Okay, so this is what you need to know. Formal letter, address the concerned person. Second, you must have a subject to your letter. Okay, for example, if you're making a request to visit the factory, so your subject will be request for the visit to the factory. So every word of the first letter, the first letter of every word, it has to be in caps because it's a subject. Okay, and then you must have an introduction followed by the body paragraph, conclusion, and the closing line. So this is how the outline of your formal letter will look like. Okay, this is how it look like. You don't have to write the address and date if they did not mention in the question. You can straight away start with the salutation, which is dear sir or dear madam. Okay, and at the end, after you have put the closing line, yours faithfully or yours sincerely, put in your signature and add in your full name. Okay, and that's for formal letter. Moving on to informal letter. Informal letter, your letter should indicate a proper understanding of the purpose, same like formal letter. Okay, you need to know your goal and aim of a piece of writing. You should also have clear awareness of the situation and audience. Okay, so for example, informal letter, you're writing to a friend. So the tone of you writing to a friend or cousin will be different compared to the one you have written to your administrator or client. Okay, it will be more informal and it will be more in a friendly tone. Okay, and just like formal letter, you have to develop all the required points in detail. So all the points should be fully amplified and well organized. Okay, so this is how your informal letter will look like. You must have greetings, introduction, body paragraph, conclusion, and sign off. Okay, it's the same as formal letter. It's just that the tone and language that you're going to use is slightly different. One is formal, another one is informal. Okay, all good. So moving on to the next topic, which is writing a report. Okay, so the purpose of you writing a report is to present relevant information in an ordered way and to make carefully considered suggestion based on that information. So usually reports is a mixture of fact and opinion, reflecting on key facts and details to offer suggestion to the reader. Okay, and it is also to offer an objective view of a situation, and also you're writing to propose alternative for the reader to consider. Okay, so for example, a report in a workplace might include statistics to support different plans for the future of the business so people can decide on the best option. All right. So who are your audience for the report? It's usually someone who is in charge. For example, it could be a teacher, it could be a principal, or it could be an employer, all right, or police. So the language and tone of the report tends to be more formal because you're writing to someone in charge. So it's a formal letter. You have to maintain the formal language. Okay, so tips for writing a report, same thing. Please identify who are your audience first. Okay, so are you writing this report for one reader or for a group of people such as the organizers of the event? Okay, second, what kind of impression you want the readers to have of you? So usually report should be impersonal and relatively formal since you're writing to someone who is in charge. Okay, so you cannot use slang or contractions such as don't, can't. You have to write in full term. Okay, do not, cannot. Okay, or could not. Okay, it is usually best to avoid attempts at humor or sarcasm because it's a report. You are reporting on something that have already happened. Okay, and the purpose for report, you may have been asked to make suggestion and recommendation in your report based on your personal experience, or it also could be to offer an overview of more complex situation. So try to include a range of topic related vocab used appropriately. Okay, and your organization, same thing. You have to have an overview in your introduction paragraph, the first part. Okay, you need to briefly introduce the topic of the report and the key areas that you're going to consider. Okay, so your readers must know what you're going to write about and why are they reading this report. In the middle part, which is the body paragraph, you need to develop and support the relevant facts and opinions about the topic. And the conclusion, please give a brief summary of your suggestion, your recommendation, or solution. Okay, and as a whole, this is the outline of your report writing. So like I said, if the question says write the report to the principal, so you start off the report by to the principal. The next thing is you need to have the subject. So for example, report on what? Robbery at Taman Utama, for example. So you're writing to the police officer. So you write report about what? Okay, then you have your introduction, first content point, second content point, third content point, conclusion, and then followed by your name and date. Since this is a report, you need to mention your name. Who has written this report? Okay, so you can put reported by and you provide your name and the date. Okay, so this is the outline of report writing. This is a sample of essay. You can have a look. Okay. Okay, moving on to the next directed writing, which is writing a speech. So the purpose of speech writing is often to inform or persuade an audience. So it's usually written to be spoken directly to an audience, and it can be used to either entertain or you're influencing the listeners that a viewpoint that the speaker is speaking is correct. Okay, you're trying to persuade your readers about something. All right, and it also can be used to encourage audience to take action or to change their behavior in some way. For example, you're writing a speech to create awareness to join a particular school, club, or society, or to recycle more. Okay, so how are you trying to persuade your audience, which is your students? Okay, you will use this chance. Okay, so you're giving a speech to your school students to make them, to attract them to join a particular school, club, or society. Or also you're trying to create awareness about recycling. Okay, so that's why you're writing this speech. Okay, moving on to tips for writing a speech. The first thing, language. Next slide, tips. Next slide, please. Okay, language, you need to know who are your audience. So are you giving your speech to a group of people that you already know? Is it your school students or people that you do not know? Or is it a mixture of both? So if you know your audience well, you may be able to relax a little, but still a speech is formal kind of talk and would not usually include slang. So you cannot use slang in this writing. Okay? So whether your audience are likely to disagree with what you will say. So you need to consider any possible objection and deal with them. So use your language carefully to make objections seem less significant. For example, using phrase like, a few people may still think. So you're just using a few. You can't use all the people, because if you use all, you're not sure whether everyone will agree with you. Okay, so you can use a few people may still think, however, then you state your perspective, sorry. Okay, and the third one, the reason you're giving this speech and how you feel about this topic. So try to imagine the words of your speech as you would speak them out loud. So your tone of voice must match your message. So choose your words that appeal to the emotion of your listeners. So focus on what you want your audience to know and feel by the end of the speech. Okay? And the most important thing is, how are you going to engage your listeners? Okay? For example, you might use inclusive words and phrases like we. You have to include yourself a part of this message. So use we, all ours, and our to make your listeners feel that you are all on the same side. Okay, you're not just talking behalf of them, you are also a part of this message. Okay, so how do you organize your speech writing? So plan where you want to finish your speech and how you will get there before you start writing. So the structure of speech writing is divided to 3 parts also. Your opening paragraph must grab your audience attention and make the overall topic of your speech clear. So for example, pose a question to the audience where you can predict the answer. And then followed by the body paragraph where it is a well-structured and supported and developed argument. Okay, and then your conclusion, it has to be a very powerful conclusion. So for example, group your final words or ideas in 3 to help make them memorable and end with a thought-provoking question or image. And then please remember to thank your audience for listening. Okay, so you can use the phrase, thank you for being very patient and for listening to my speech. That's how you should end your speech. Okay, don't forget to thank your audience. Okay, so please remember, speech must have introduction. The whole purpose of your introduction is to grab the attention of your audience, explain the topic. Okay, if you want to hook your readers, then you can start off by asking a question, or even you can start off with a fact. Okay, so for example, starting the introduction paragraph with a question, you can start by, have you ever participated in a football competition? So this question will be asked to all your audience. So they will answer you yes or no. Okay, or you could also start with a fact. Okay, if you're starting with a fact, it's a well-known fact. So for example, do you know that inhaling air pollution takes around 1 to 2 years from human life? So when you give this kind of fact, it is something new for people who do not know. So it grabs your readers' attention. Okay, so this is the flow of speech writing. Just a quick recap. First, you greet your audience. Okay, good morning, everyone, or good morning, ladies and gentlemen. They'll give you in the question itself. Okay, followed by introduction. It could be a hook where you can ask question or state a fact, and then you must state your purpose of you providing the speech. Followed by body paragraph, which is fully amplified details, and then your conclusion, summarize everything that you have spoke and thank them for listening to you. Clear? So this is for speech writing. Okay. Can we move on to the next one? All right, moving on to writing an article. So the purpose of you writing an article is often to inform and persuade the reader. Okay, so article gives the reader the information about a certain topic, bringing together and discussing different perspectives to provide a balanced argument. Okay, so articles can also be used to persuade reader that a certain viewpoint is correct. So for example, articles in newspaper or magazine might express a particular viewpoint or perspective, which could be positive or negative depending on the topic given. Okay, so it's very important on how you use the language. So let's look at the language. Okay, as usual, please identify who are your audience. Okay, when you're writing an article, it could be newspaper article or it could be magazine article. The most common one is magazine article. Okay, so when you're writing an article, you do not know your readers personally. So you need to think about what is their interest, okay? What could be their interest or what could be their experience before you start writing, okay? And what are you expecting or how you want your audience to react? So remember that the tone of most articles should be semi-formal. Okay, so before you decide your tone, imagine your article is being read out loudly in front of people. Okay, and how would that sound to your readers? Okay, so for example, an article reviewing a film may be humorous. Okay, and also it could even be sarcastic, but that would not work well for more serious readers or topics. Okay, so you be considerate about the tone that you're using. Okay, and what is the purpose of you writing this article? Okay, is it to persuade your readers to agree with you, or is it to invite your readers to think about different point of view? Okay, So for example, do you need to sound more reliable and well-informed, or choose words that strongly convey a particular emotion? Okay, identify your purpose first. Okay, and how do you keep your readers' interest? Okay, imagine how boring it will be for your reader if you use the same kind of sentences and simple repetitive vocabulary. Okay, so try to include a range of grammatical structure and relevant vocabulary to keep your readers engaged. All right, moving on to the organization. How do you organize your article writing? So same, 3 parts. First is introduction. You need to engage your reader's interest and introduce your argument and the main points of the topic that you're going to discuss. In the middle part, which is your body paragraph, you need to develop relevant and interesting points about the topic, okay, to interest or convince your reader. And your conclusion, you need to draw your points together, summarize, and leave your reader with a clear impression of the argument that you want them to believe, or the viewpoints that you would like them to reconsider. Okay, so at the end of your article writing, they must have a clear idea of what you have discussed in your article writing. Okay, so let me show you the outline of the article writing. First, you must have an eye-catching heading, which is a title. Okay, and byline is not really important, but if you want to include, you can. Byline means you are writing by who wrote this article. So if you want to write your own name, can. And then followed by introduction, body, and conclusion. Okay, so for directed writing, we have learned 4 types of essay. We have learned letter, report, speech, okay, and article. Now, moving on to section 2. Section 2. Wait, give me a minute. Section 2 is composition, 30 marks. Okay. We are still in paper 1. So section 2 composition, this is an essay testing language and content combined. Okay. You will be asked to answer 1 question from a choice of 5 essay titles. So they will present you with 1 descriptive, 2 argumentative, and 2 narrative titles from which you have to choose. Okay. And you have to write a response between 350 to 500 words. All right, so let's have a look at descriptive writing and argumentative and narrative one by one. So this is how your question will look like in your IG paper for composition. Next slide, please. Okay, this is how it'll look like. So you see there's 1 descriptive question, 2 argumentative question, and followed by 2 more narrative question. Okay, so what do you need to do? You need to read all 5 questions, choose 1 topic, and make a plan out of what you're going to write. Okay, so you must have introduction. Your choice of words must be clear. You must have body paragraph and conclusion. Okay, so let's go into descriptive writing first. So when it comes to descriptive writing, vocabulary is the most important part because you want your reader to imagine what you are describing. Okay, nobody likes to just read a description of a person, place, or object. So use appropriate vocab so that you can make it an interesting read for your readers. Okay, so for descriptive, basically it means painting a picture with words. You use sensory details. You make it appeal to the readers by using the senses such as sight, hearing, touch, and so on. Okay, so when it comes to describing people, you can use characteristics of the person such as tall, well-built, shiny black hair, and so on. So remember, you can describe the height, the age, the build, the face, the eyes, the hair, and clothing of the person. Okay, and not only that, you can also describe the attributes and hobbies of the person and why she inspire or motivate you. This is for describing people. On the other hand, when you are describing places, okay, when you are describing places, the next one, please. When you're describing places, you have to state where and what the place is. So for example, you give the name of the place, okay? Describe how far is the place from your house, or how you got there and why do you like the place the most. Okay, you can describe the unique features of the place and what is so good about it. Okay, not only that, you can also describe the weather, how it felt, whether was it hot or was it cold. Okay, and would you recommend this place for other people to go for vacation? If you say yes, provide the reasons. If you say no, provide the reasons also. So this is how you describe about the place. Okay, next one, when you're describing things, okay, you have to name the thing and what type of it. Is it a gadget? Okay, for example, it could be a Rolex watch. So describe the appearance of it. Remember to be precise in mentioning the color, shape, and size of the object. Okay, not only that, you can also describe the features of the object and why is it so special to you. Okay, so this is how you write descriptive essay. Moving on to argumentative essay. Argumentative essay is a category of writing in which you either speak in favor of a topic or you go against it. Okay, it is the opposition or disagreement over something. And not only that, you have to support it with facts and example to support your point of view. Okay, so how do you engage your audience when you're writing argumentative essay? First, you can use facts, you can ask questions, you can target which emotion you want your audience to feel, and the last one, you can also bring in humor. Okay, so the format of argumentative essay: introduction, you must have a hook. You can for the hook, you can ask a question or state a fact. You must have background information, thesis statement. Body paragraph, it's either you decide you want the arguments to be in favor or not, and then you provide the counter arguments. And conclusion, you have to summarize everything and conclude your argumentative essay. Okay, so all these are very in detail. Moving on to narrative essay. Narrative essay is a form of writing in which there is the main character, okay, and this character faces a problem or an event and then deals with it. So in simple words, it tells you a story with proper sequence of event, which is plot. Okay, so in order for you to write a very good narrative essay, you must have a good storyline with a plot. It has climax, okay, it must have characters, main characters, minor characters, must also have setting. Setting is the place. Okay, so just like how a cake has some layers, narrative also have some important parts. For example, like I said, plot, which is the sequence in which events happen. Okay, second, characters, because characters, they perform the action and they also speak the dialogue. Third, conflict or climax. This is when your character faces problem. And setting, the location or time in your story. So all these are some important parts that you should include in your narrative writing. Okay, so how do you write a good plot? Of course, the first thing, okay, no, you have 4 suggestions, 4 ways you can make it interesting. First, you can make it seem like the main character faces a conflict or problem. Second, your story, maybe everything goes right, there's happy ending. Third, things go wrong, where problems arise and create suspense. Or lastly, you can wrap up how your character deals with the problem. It could be successful or it fails. So all these are some examples of how you can write interesting plot to grab your reader's attention. Okay, so like I said, characters, we have 2 types. We have major characters, we have minor characters. So these characters are very important in your narrative essay. You must have characters. Okay, because they perform the action and they are the ones who give the dialogue. Setting, like I said, setting is where the whole story takes place and when it takes place. Okay, the time and location. Okay, so that is all for paper 1 composition. Okay, so we have covered paper 1. Moving on to paper 2. Paper 2 is a reading paper. Okay, 1 hour 45 minutes, and it has 2 sections. So we will start off with section 1 first. Reading for ideas, 25 marks. So for this section, you will scan a factual text. It's about 700 words. They'll either give you report, article, advertisement, or email or letter. Okay, so what are you required to do? You are required to identify, note down the required information. Okay, for example, they want either similarities or differences, or maybe they want you to identify causes and effects, or maybe they want you to identify advantages or disadvantages, or problems or solution, or actions and consequences. Okay, any of this. Okay, so you have to read through the text, identify and note down what they have asked you to look for. Okay, and a few, for each criteria, they'll give you one example of content point. The first one will already be provided in the question paper. Okay, and the total marks is 12 for content points alone. So for example, they give you similarities and differences. So you need to write 6 similarities and another 6 for differences. Please remember, the example is not included in the marks. Okay, you need to provide 6 for similarities and 6 more for differences because the total marks is 12 for content points alone. Okay, so candidates can use the notes to write a summary of between 150 to 180 words. This is the word limit. So please remember, when it comes to summary, the main important thing is the word limit given. You cannot write anything lesser or more than what is required. Okay, and of course, the 10 words will already be given in the question. So you have to include the 10 words when you're counting your total words for your summary. All right, so 10 marks for your summary. So 12 for content points and another 10 for the summary that you have written. Okay, so like I said, cover all the facts, okay, for your summary. Do not include examples and opinions. It's not necessary. You're only repeating points and your word limit will go beyond that. Okay. Second tip, you have to underline. It's highly suggested, recommended for you to underline the main points in the passage so that you can keep track of whatever you have identified. Third, summary writing. The whole purpose of you writing summary is for you to make the long text into a simpler version. So you have to write in your own words. Okay, replace the words using synonyms. Okay, do not copy paste, because if you copy paste from the text, you will lose a lot of marks. Okay, and you're also recommended to use transition words such as moreover, furthermore, however, meanwhile. Okay, and then when you're done with summary, please read it again to prevent any spelling or grammar mistake. Okay, so this is how your question will look like. The passage is provided, and then this is the question. Okay, so you see they have bold what is required. Next slide, please. Okay, so identify and write down the problems associated with plastic. That is the first one. They're asking for problems. Second, possible solution to the problem. So 2 things. You're identifying the problem and the solution. Okay, so 12 marks, like I said. Okay, the first example is already given, but it is not counted for your marks. You need to give 6 points for the problems and 6 more for possible solution. Okay, this is the first part, the 12 marks. The next one, you have to use the content points that you have found, and you have to write your own summary using the first 10 words that they have given. Okay, so please remember, you have to summarize the lengthy draft. You have to make it more brief. Use your own words to describe the main ideas. Okay. Next. Okay, how do you cut redundant words? For example, in the sentence, they give you true facts. Facts are already true, so you don't really need to use the word true. Make it short, just use facts. Past history. History is already in the past. So it's the same meaning. You can just cut off the word past. Same goes to smiled happily and basic fundamentals. Okay, this is how you cut redundant words. Okay, and also overusing adverbs. Okay, shouted loudly. Shouting is already loud. Okay, so you don't really have to use shouted loudly. You can just say shouted. Whispered softly, just say whispered. Okay, so this is how you cut off the words that are not necessary. You can make it more simpler. Okay, use transition words. Okay, here are some of examples of transition words. I think I've told you all earlier. All right, We are still in section 1, but this is question 2 in section 1. So question 2 in section 1, they will ask you to identify example of a function in a text. Every year, this question changes. Sometimes they'll ask you for facts, sometimes they'll ask you for opinions, sometimes they'll ask you for advice, criticism, or warning. So this will be a short answer worth of 3 marks. Okay, so when it comes to opinion, okay, opinion means they're asking you whether it's true or false. Okay, third one, advice. Advice means instruction. What should or should not be done? All right, and the third one, criticism. Criticism is constructive expression of dissatisfaction of apparent faults or mistakes. And the last one, warning, statement that indicates possible danger or problem or unpleasant situation. So this is how the question will look like. Okay, so you see for this question, they ask you to give one opinion from each of this paragraph. So you go to your insert, you go to paragraph 2 and identify which one was it opinion. Okay, same thing for the next 3, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and paragraph 5. So you only identify one opinion. Okay, so that is all for section 1. Moving on to section 2. Section 2, reading for meaning. All right, so this is where you will read a narrative passage. The passage could be a report, article, story, which is approximately 700 words. You will respond to short answer and multiple choice question. And this is to test your ability to understand the language, both explicit and implicit meanings. Okay, so your question will look like this. Okay, the insert is given. Okay, once the insert is given, you have to read, at least try to read one time. One time is not enough, at least 2 or more. Okay, and this is how your questions will look like. Okay, structured questions. You have to read carefully. Make sure have a look at the words that are bold. Okay, if they ask you for 2 details, make sure you provide 2 details. Do not just give one answer. You will lose mark. Okay, so make sure you read the questions carefully. All right, and this is the questions where it has MCQ. Okay, MCQ, you just have to circle one correct answer. All right, and the last part is where you have to write the writer's effect. Okay, the meaning and also effect. So how do you crack all these comprehension questions? There's a few types of questions, such as literal, inferential question, vocab, own word, and writer's craft. So let's have a look at the types of questions. So we have direct questions. Direct question is where a straightforward answer is required. Okay, for example, what was the mother's constant prediction? It was that she would get lost. All these answers are very direct in the insert. You just have to read and understand what they want, and you just have to write the answer. Okay, so this is direct question, very easy to score. Second, language question. Okay, we also call it as the link question. So words are phrased in a connection with an action or intention. So for example, the writer was fearsomely but thrillingly alone. Explain in your own words how she felt. So the keyword here is how she felt. So they have given you the phrase. Go back to this phrase in the insert and identify what did she feel. So the answer should be she was afraid, or you can also write terrified. Okay, so it has a link to the passage. Okay, the next one, the future stroke question, where you have to find a word or phrase that links to the previous idea. So for example, the writer says, I would have to look after myself. Give the expression used later in the paragraph, which conveys the same idea. So you have to look back to the previous idea. Okay, left to my own devices, what would I eat? So for example, this is from the passage. Okay, can you see the text box? Okay, see the one underlined in blue. I would have to look after myself. Okay, it's linked to the word that is at the bottom there, left to my own devices. So the answer is in the passage itself. So this is what we call as the future stroke question. Okay, next we have the why effect question, when you have to explain a word or a phrase. So the question starts, why do you think the writer let the door slam with a satisfying thud? Okay, So basically, they're asking you why. So you have to just give the reason. So the reason why the person slammed the door is because to express anger. Okay, slamming a door means they're expressing anger. So that's it. You just have to say to express her anger. All right. Same thing. Moving on. We have the next type of question, irony question. Identify the oddness of the situation. Okay. So for example, explain why it was ironic that the writer stopped at the crossroads. So the answer, she wasn't allowed to go beyond the crossroads, but she was running away from home. This one, you have to read through the passage and understand what are they trying to say. You need to understand the oddness of the situation. Why did the particular character do this? Okay, then you have to explain. Next, we have the list questions. The list questions is when you have to answer in form of points. You have to list out a few things. So for example, the question says, which two things about the mother's appearance show how upset she was? Two things. So they're asking for two details. So you write in point form. First, her face was wet with tears. Second, she had bare feet. Okay. Please write in point form. Okay. The next one, we have explain in own words question. This is very frequent in the paper. Okay. So for example, the question says, the writer says her grip on my shoulder transmitted her awareness that I was always going to leave. Explain in your own words what is happening here. Okay. So how do you answer this? First, you need to find keywords. Okay. Find keywords. All right. For example, transmitted, it means transfer. Awareness, it means realization. Okay, so how do you explain in context? Okay, the grip on her shoulder showed that her daughter will leave one day. Okay, so the word transmitted, okay, that is the key word there. So you need to explain in your own words. Understand what are they asking you for, and you have to explain the whole situation. Okay, what does it show when she was gripping her? Okay. Moving on to the next slide. Next, we have the meaning question. The meaning question, you have to read the passage to find the meaning of words. Okay, so how do you do this? This is how the question will look like. You are given an option of 4, A, B, C, D. Okay, so one of the most common mistakes that the candidates do is you just read the word in bold. For example, question A, fashion, and you just look for synonyms. That's not how you answer. Okay, can you see next to the word fashion, they have put in bracket line 2. Okay, that means they want you to refer back to line 2. Okay, that's how you should do. You go back to line 2 and you look what is the closest meaning to that. All right. So look for an explanation within the sentence, okay? So discrimination or unfairly targeting one or more groups by those who perceive themselves to be superior can cause distress, okay? So for example, all right? Sorry, moving on to the back one. So this one, the answer is bias, okay? Second one, use an example, all right? If it is given, okay? So when an example is given, for example, it can give a reader the clue to the meaning. Okay, so vulnerable people such as young children, the elderly, or the handicapped individuals might have protection under certain laws. Okay, so you can see the example is given there, handicapped. So vulnerable people they're referring to those young, elderly, or handicapped individuals. So the clue is given there. Okay. So that means young children, the elderly, handicapped individuals, protection, they are the ones unsafe or at risk. Okay, so that's how you identify. So for example, like I said earlier, fashion, they ask you to refer to line 2. So you see your line 2, I hated to be held by the hand or expected to walk in an orderly fashion. Okay, you cannot just read the question and answer, just pick one answer directly. You have to go through all the options, okay? You replace the word fashion with all the 4 options given. So for example, walk in an orderly trend. It doesn't make sense. Walk in an orderly trend, it doesn't make sense. Option B, shape. Walk in an orderly shape, it doesn't make sense also. Okay, walk in an orderly way. Okay, when you put in, it makes sense. So you already know that this one is right. If you look at option D also, okay, sorry, option D, walk in an orderly look doesn't make sense also. Okay, so the closest answer here is option C. This is how you answer. You have to put in all the option and see which one suits perfectly for the sentence. Okay, so make sure you read the question carefully. Same thing, let me explain one more example. Okay, so the word given here is uninhabited. Okay, so the option is A, empty, B, bare, C, lonely, and D, wild. So we once visited a ruined castle on an uninhabited island. Okay, so which one fits perfectly? Okay, you have to choose the one that fits that line. Okay, empty is the most closest answer. That's correct. All right, so that's for the first part. The next part, where the most commonly mistake that is done by candidates, which is the meaning and effect questions. Okay, so you need to remember when they ask you for meaning, what are they asking you for? Okay, meaning means they want you to look for the factual meaning of the phrase or the literal meaning of the phrase given. Okay, so basically what defines the sentence and explain what is meant by that. Okay, so basically the question that you need to ask yourself is, what is intended to be or what actually is? Okay, on the other hand, we have effect. Effect means the impact that the writer wants to create. So what is the writer trying to create using the phrase that they have given? Okay, what is the symbolic meaning there, or what is the result, or what is the outcome? Okay, so you need to understand the events first. So in order for you to score this, let's do a few practice, okay, with some examples. Okay, the first one. Can you see the highlighted phrase there? Fastening the brown buttons one by decisive one. Okay, that is the first one. Let's look at the question. So this is how your meaning and effect question will look like. Okay, so meaning, when you read the sentence, fastening the brown buttons one by decisive one, meaning this person, okay, she basically buttoned up her coat. For that, you need to read the passage, but that is the literal meaning here. Okay, this is just to show that she buttoned up her coat. Okay, the next one, effect. Like I said, effect means what is the writer trying to create, what kind of effect he wants to create on the reader. Okay, so the same line, fastening the brown buttons one by decisive one. So the writer here trying to show that she is determined. It shows her determination. Okay, so this is the effect he wants to have on the readers. Okay, the next example, same thing, same paragraph, example 1. Okay, example 1. My shoes scuffed and always scuffed no matter how often they were polished. Okay, so this is the phrase given for question B. So the meaning here, scuffed, means that it is always dirty or damaged. Okay, so that is the literal meaning. Her shoes were always damaged. Okay, and the effect that the writer trying to create here, okay, because you see the word is repeated, my shoes scuffed, always scuffed, no matter how often they were polished, no matter how many times it was cleaned, it was still dirty. So what is the effect he's trying to create here on the readers is, he's trying to show to the readers that this person is always untidy. Okay, so this is how you answer meaning and effect question. Can we do another one more example? So another one more example. All right, the phrase given, it's highlighted in blue. Burying my face in their softness and their never walked on pores. Okay, meaning, what does it mean? Okay, so this is basically a character with the kittens. Okay, so the meaning is she patted her kittens and put her face in their fur. Burying my face in their softness. The literal meaning here is, you have to imagine this. Okay, so basically she pat the kitten and she put her face in their fur. That's the literal meaning. And what effect is she trying to create? She's trying to show her excitement and joy. So that's what the writer effect on the reader. Okay? So what you need to remember is, okay, when it comes to meaning, it means the literal meaning of the phrase. Okay, this is what the examiner says. This is all you need to know. When it comes to meaning, just know what is the literal meaning they are asking for. Second, they ask you effect. It means what the impact the writer wants to create on the readers. Okay, so just remember these two keywords, okay, key lines, literal meaning and the impact. Okay, so we have come to the end of our session. We have covered both paper 1 and paper 2. Thank you everyone for joining.